welcome to iBuzz. I'm your host Nosheen Bukhari, bringing you the best entertainment news from showbiz world. In today's episode, we will be talking about the rift between Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. Of course, there is a lot to say about it, followed by some news on Hugh Jackman's new starrer and a review on The Bold Type. First things first, let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. Ant and Dec take aim at London-centric television industry. Iron Man star Terrence Howard said Robert Downey Jr. owed him $100 million. Jessie Nelson opens up about her decision to leave Little Mix. Hugh Jackman's starrer Reminiscence to release a week early on August 20. Oscar and Grammy winners to be offered fast-track UK visas. And now, coming to the top story of the day. Iron Man's actor Terrence Howard, an Oscar nominee who was coming off many hits, was supplied deal reportedly between $3.5 and $4.5 million. This made Howard the highest paid star in the entire movie. He was promised a further $5 million if Iron Man 2 occurred, during which he was speculated to be the War Machine. But things went different when Robert Downey Jr. was welcomed by folks with arms wide open. Information began trickling in that Howard's relationship with MCU was not going as deliberate. To discuss this further, we have Josh Rom, who is an entertainment correspondent at Talk Radio and Feature Story. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
And then we have Tom Williets, who is a radio presenter and a producer.
Hi, Nosheen. Thanks for having me.
So, Josh, tell us about this rift. I mean, Terrence Howard still seems to be angry. It's been so many years, but Robert Downey Jr., seems to be still making him upset. And now that he's claimed that Robert Downey Jr., he owes him $100 million, do you think that there is a weightage in this claim?
Well, I don't think there's any particular legal weightage. However, I think it's due to the fact that Marvel was actually reluctant to cast Robert Downey Jr. in the role of Tony Stark in the franchise due to his history of drug and substance abuse. And I think because Terrence feels as though he basically played a part in getting Robert Downey Jr. the role, and then because Robert Downey Jr. made the Marvel Cinematic Universe the success that it is, I think he's more saying the fact that because I was a big part in Robert Downey Jr.'s success, he therefore owes me this money because he himself was sidelined, even though he originally helped to make the Marvel Cinematic Universe what it was.
Right. And Tom, what are your thoughts? Because we all know that Robert Downey Jr. was actually introduced by Terrence, and now Terrence seems to be very angry. What are your thoughts on his claim?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got to remember this happened before Disney owned the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was before it was the titan that it is today. Nowadays it's worth over $22.5 billion US. It's absolutely massive. But hiring Robert Downey Jr. was seen as a risk. They weren't sure whether it was something that was going to be lucrative for them. And Terrence Howard, he agreed to taking this $1 million pay cut, allegedly. So in my opinion, if you agree to a pay cut, that is your decision and your conversation that you're having with your hirer. I don't think there's anything really to do with Robert Downey Jr. at all.
It is also speculated Russo brothers are fast friends with Robert Downey Jr., hence, ending an entire franchise on Iron Man. Of course, we know that Iron Man is the movie that actually, began the Avengers franchise. But do you think it was necessary to make it look like Robert Downey Jr. only because they are good friends with him?
Well, I think ultimately this is about the characters, isn't it? With every movie franchise, it's about the characters and the people that you can invest in and the people that you love, and that's what made Iron Man so successful. It was this character that everybody just fell in love with, and the incredible things that he did and created, and the people that he brought together. Ultimately, that is what made the Marvel Cinematic Universe so successful. I don't really think that it had much to do with friendships between producers, directors, actors, etc. That helps, of course. I think having a great relationship between actor and production team massively helps, because it creates an environment that allows the actors to do their best work and the production team to do their best work. But ultimately, the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe does rely on these incredible characters that, of course, were invented by Stan Lee, and that's where it all comes from.
Right. Josh, what are your thoughts on it?
I pretty much agree. I mean, I think obviously Marvel weren't to know at first who the fans were going to fall in love with. I mean, they could obviously try their best, but this isn't necessarily about the Russo-specific relationship with Robert Downey Jr. It's very much about the characters that Stan Lee created. It's very much the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe goes, what happens in the film, and I think the audience by the end of Avengers Endgame fell in love with each and every one of those characters, and obviously that started out with Robert Downey Jr.
Right, right. Howard was, rumored to be a very difficult person on set, and his scenes required too many retakes, too many edits. So that is why probably they did not opt for him once again. Do you think that, Howard should make peace with it and should move on now with what's been claimed about him?
Well, I do think partly that could be the publicity machine basically trying to justify why he was recast. Who knows if that's actually the truth? That could just be Hollywood spin. I do think now, the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe has gone, I think there is a certain element of sour grapes on Howard's side. So yeah, maybe he should try to make peace with it for the sake of his own career and for the sake of him moving forward as an actor, because I think it's fair to say that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has definitely moved on without him. They recast the role. Don Cheadle played his role. The fans accept Don Cheadle. They weren't up in arms about the recasting. So yeah, maybe he should move forward, and I think he should just accept that this is Hollywood spin.
Right. Tom, do you think that he should move on, or this is his cry for seeking justice? And what sort of justice does he seek here? I mean, what do you see the relevant people, trying to help him? How could they help him? I mean, the franchise is over, the game is kind of over, and now he's still, coming up with these claims. What possible measures do you think that people can take, and what exactly he means when he says, when he makes these claims?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, I'm not sure that he's really after the money. I think what he's after is some thanks for essentially introducing Robert Downey Jr. to the franchise and allowing him to come into this franchise. I don't know if he's going to get it. Frankly, I think he ought to move on. He's a well-established actor. Like you said earlier, Nosheen, he was Oscar nominated before he came into Iron Man. He's a very well-established actor, and he's got a great career ahead of him. But I think it's difficult to let things like this go, but very important to, so that he can move on and not be remembered as the guy who got upset about being cut out of Iron Man.
Right. And Josh, tell us about Robert Downey Jr., because we haven't seen him talking about this. This is the second time these claims are making it to the news from Howard, but we haven't seen Robert Downey Jr., coming in his defense. Do you think it's going to push him this time to say something in his defense, or he would just remain silent and that is the best thing for him to do?
I think he's just going to remain silent. I think Robert Downey Jr. is basically taking the money and running to the hills as fast as he can. I mean, that's the thing. Robert Downey Jr. has made Marvel what it is. He has a multi-million-dollar franchise, even multi-billion-dollar franchise has basically been built around him. We don't know the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether or not he will be involved. Obviously, it's been rumored that Tony Stark's going to make an appearance in the upcoming Black Widow film, but I think Robert Downey Jr. we're not going to hear from him on this. He's not going to give further flames to this news, to this coverage. I think he feels that it would be beneath him.
Right. And Tom, do you think that the Russo brothers should also, step in because, you know, earlier, like I said, they had a claim that they're never going to hire a person with, you know, a disturbed past, somebody who was on medication, and now, you know, promoting Robert Downey Jr. not as a personality, but as a whole lot of franchise in himself. So do you think that this is where they should, you know, step in to clear the air between the two?
I think ultimately it's not their responsibility. I think that really this is an issue between Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. Like Josh said, I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is going to get involved. I don't think that he needs to, and I don't think that he sees it as anything that he wants or needs to be involved with, really. Ultimately, it is between the two actors. But the issue lies really, in reality, between Howard and Marvel. So it's a bit murky, and there's a lot of he said, she said, and a lot of rumours and stories that have come from different sides. So ultimately, it's a personal issue, I think, with Terrence Howard, and I think the only person who can sort it or put it to bed is Terrence Howard himself. Right,
and Tom, do you think that this is now turning more into a political debate? This can be, you can say, a step to bring the Marvel universe, you know, down, because they're about to release so many series. They have made, you know, they've signed their contract with Disney Plus. Every now and then we hear a news on, you know, yet another series to be launched. So do you think that this can be a step to bring them down, and somebody is actually using Howard for this entire scenario?
I think maybe there's a little bit of spite. I don't know whether somebody is using Howard in this scenario, but I do think that there is a slight bit of spite between Howard and Marvel, because of course he was only in the one movie and then he was cut, and now it's the biggest cinematic universe that we've ever seen, you know, and like you said, it seems like every 10 minutes we're seeing another series or another film being announced, but every single person in the world knows what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. So I think that maybe Howard is feeling a little bit spiteful and a little bit jealous of that he's now no longer part of it. But ultimately, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so big. I don't think that any move really is going to do much damage to it.
Right. And Josh, what are your thoughts? Do you think that it's Howard's own personal anger, or there is a lobbying against the MCU?
Yeah, this is definitely Howard's personal anger. It's definitely sour grapes on Howard's behalf against the MCU. It's like what Tom said, every 10 minutes we're seeing a new series or a new film. They're riding high on the success of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They've got The Eternals coming up. They've got Black Widow coming up. They've got so many films and so many projects in the pipeline, you know, Black Panther 2, the new Ant-Man and the Wasp film. So there are so many projects coming up. They are virtually untouchable, and I don't think this is a concerted effort against the MCU and against Marvel. This is purely sour grapes on Howard's behalf. You know, he is an Oscar-winning actor, and I think he personally feels wronged, and he personally feels angry that he has had a part in the success of Robert Downey Jr., in the success of Iron Man, but has not received the award, the reward in which he feels he arguably deserves.
Right. And we hope that the both of them, you know, sit down together like adults and, you know, resolve their issues. So Tom and Josh, thank you very much indeed for your time and discussion. That was Josh and Tom sharing their thoughts on what Terrence thinks about Robert Downey Jr. Now moving to the other story details of the day. Ant and Dec have spoken out against a London-centric television industry they say feels inaccessible to young people who are hoping to work in it. In an interview with The Telegraph, the popular presenting duo said TV was an accessible place when they started out in their native Newcastle in the 1990s. They have now joined forces with the Prince's Trust on Making It in Media, a project aimed at bringing young people from diverse and disadvantaged backgrounds into the industry. Jessie Nelson has given her first interview since leaving Little Mix and revealed how online abuse caused her to reach breaking point last year. The star said constant comparison to her bandmates took a toll on her mental health, prompting her decision to quit. She admitted that she was classed as obese and fat. With the music video looming on the horizon, Nelson remembered panicking and going on an extreme diet. In her statement, Nelson said that she had made her decision after much consideration and with a heavy heart, but it felt that was necessary to protect her mental health. Sci-fi thriller Reminiscence starring Hugh Jackman within the lead will now open every week early within the U.S. The film, which marks the characteristic directorial debut of Westworld co-creator Lisa Joy, will launch on August 20 as a substitute of its beforehand scheduled date, which was August 27. This is the second time that the studio Warner Brothers has modified the movie's launch. The Home Office has announced its decision to fast-track the process for those winning coveted arts awards. It is part of the government's bid to attract the best and brightest from around the world. International stars who have won BAFTA, Brit, Mobo, Tony, or Golden Globe Awards will also be eligible. We must admit, these stars are getting luckier day by day. That is it from the newsroom. We will be right back after a quick short break. Don't go anywhere and stay tuned. Welcome back. In this segment, we will be reviewing the Netflix series The Bold Type, a glimpse into the outrageous lives and loves of those responsible for a global women's magazine. To have a further discussion on this, we have Suparna Sharma, who is a movie critic. Suparna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Lovely to be back.
Suparna, so this is basically inspired by Joanna Coles, but do you think it looks more inspired by The Devil Wears Prada?
Yeah, actually, it feels very inspired by various things. I think the motherboard of all of these series is the Sex and the City, of course. You know, 4 friends or 3 friends, you have that combo. And I think every country is following this template. In Pakistan, there was that Churels. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
Which, so it's a template set by, I think, the seriously successful Sex and the City. And Devil Wears Prada, but I didn't think it has such a strong the editor's not so strong here, I felt. And its weakest point, apart from various other issues that I have with the show, was that the journalism feels very done very shoddily, which is strange because it is directly based on Cosmopolitan. So I thought that was one of its weakest points, the journalism bit.
Like, you think that the journalism was overly glamorized in this series?
I mean, you know how we do stories, right? We do a little research, and here it's like, you know, the editors seem kind of just okay, and there's the writing process. I mean, we never read the stories. We just get to see 1 line or 2 lines. So while it's supposed to be about these big issues like either Me Too or you know, breast cancer, etc., I have no sense. I mean, do you have any sense of what they wrote, what appeared? No. What we do get is a lot of glamour, which is fun.
Exactly.
And
there is also a lot of objectification of women. I mean, they did try to make it look like in support with, you know, feminism and, you know, women empowerment, but it gives a lot of feel of objectification of women. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they are all really thin. Nobody's struggling with weight. In fact, I was thinking
Everybody's ideally looking beautiful.
Yes, everybody is always turned out well, and that's fine. I mean, it's not supposed to be a real show. It's not a documentary. But these are impossible kind of body types. These are impossible kind of you know, the looks. I mean, I was just randomly looking up, you know, because its fashion has become so big that there are websites devoted to who wore what, who carried what bag. And if you kind of calculate the full look of any character at pretty much any point in time, it's not less than $5,000. So, you know, it's huge. I mean, that's the look there, you know, that's this impossible kind of aspirational look for women they are selling while they are saying accept yourself as you are. So it's kind of this double funny messaging which women always get anyway.
Right. And there was also a very daring act in the movie, which of course was made in the name of inclusivity. But how do you sis? I mean, the character of Adina.
She's this big kind of artist who struggles with her visa in US, etc. I found it, I thought the show ticks a lot of boxes and takes and breaks some kind of taboos. You know, it goes in directions of issues which are hugely taboo issues. So I think Muslim lesbian girl is a huge taboo. But I think a bigger taboo would be a Muslim gay man. So there is. I found it interesting. I found mm, her character development not that exciting because she's kind of she's not in the main group. So I think the show's investment is almost entirely in its three main characters, and they three are really adorable, and they really hold the series. I think they're very cute, the girls.
And out of these three, Jane and Kate and Sutton, which one of these are your most favorite characters?
I like Sutton. I found her more real, more also because of her mother issues and maybe family issues, and she struggles a lot with issues maybe I can relate with. Motherhood. She doesn't want to have a child. Then she has an affair with. I mean, that's not an issue I relate with. Has an issue with a very senior colleague, but. I don't know. Maybe also because she's the prettiest. She's really cute. I enjoyed, but I really like Cat. Cat.
Cat.
A lot. Cat, right?
Yeah.
She's. I love her hair. I love her whole embracing this. Though she's half white, half black, that embracing that identity. I found that episode very interesting. So I thought that it deals with a lot of issues, a lot of significant, important issues, and some of them it does really well, but some it kind of just it's on the surface and superficial. But I binge watched it, so I can't complain much.
Right. And which one of the entire cast do you think there is a least favorite character of yours?
Least favorite, I don't know. Richard, I don't like the actor too much. I think he's quite supporting and sweet, but there is something very maybe corporate about him. Maybe that's what it is. And I like journalists, but I didn't like that the head of the digital guy. I don't know if you remember the name. The guy keeps doing namaste and yoga and meditation. I didn't like that character, but that character was supposed to be the most hateful character in the series, I think.
Right. Can we talk a little about Jacqueline here? I mean, the boss, the real boss lady here. The way she carried her character, the way she carried herself. What are your thoughts on that?
I liked her. I liked her poise. I liked how she. I mean, she's. It seems editorially she's only interested in one person, one journalist in her team. That's that's Jane, and I liked because it's based on a real woman who did a lot of work, a lot of good work, a lot of good journalism. I like her character, and I found it interesting. To have a boss like that. Like, I've never worked with a woman boss. So,
so you do not relate, right? Right.
And no, I mean,
do you think that each character was originally empowering when it comes to women empowerment, and when we talk about feminism, do you think that it was actually ticking the box and doing justice to the concept?
Yes, I think so. I think you come away from the series feeling. So what I found funny and interesting was that no matter how big the problem is, these girls keep saying to each other, "You got it, you got it," and
like they're pushing each other.
that seems to be the series message to women as well, that you've got it. You have it, you can do it. So just go ahead. So I felt good watching it. I didn't come out with it. I mean, apart from the body types, like, oh my God, these dresses, I wish I had them. Wish I had this figure. Apart from that, I think it dealt with issues in whatever way, but it's positive.
Right. So, Suparna, the finale is premiering this May. Do you have any expectations? Some sort of special expectations? Are you excited for what the show is going to look like in the season finale?
I have no expectations because I think season 4 ended very abruptly because of the pandemic, and so that didn't give me a sense of any kind of at what point it has ended. I mean, I don't want to give a spoiler here for people who haven't watched it, But I think there is going to be a kind. Right now, they seem to be on certain paths. I think there's going to be they're going to arrive at certain points, maybe in relationships or in their jobs, etc. So right now it's kind of a progression. I think by the end of next season they're going to arrive wherever they're supposed to arrive,
Right.
and that'll be nice to see where it goes.
Right, right. Suparna, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much.
That was Suparna Sharma giving her thoughts on the bold type. And that is it from today's episode. We hope you liked it. Don't forget to share your feedback on social media link mentioned down below. Take care and goodbye.